Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I have an interesting piece of information for you today. It's been many, many years where I had this feeling that there was this upper echelon of market makers, of masters, of people that were potentially manipulating markets, industries, interfering, exploiting financial markets, sabotaging them, that would bypass good faith human efforts. And I heard about a book called The Quants, How a New Breed of Math Whizzes Conquered Wall Street and Nearly Destroyed It by Scott Patterson, a staff reporter at the Wall Street Journal. And I had to call Scott over to It's Rainmaking Time to explain the essence of this book and what we need to know about high-frequency trading and who these quants are. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Scott Patterson to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I want to know what led you to write this book and to research this subject.
In the summer of 2007, there was this extremely unusual event. A lot of these quant hedge funds that operate beneath the surface of the market. Most people never know what they're doing or have never even heard of these funds. Suddenly had a huge blow up. It came out of nowhere, and some of my sources on Wall Street started telling me about a few of these people, and one in particular caught my attention. It was this very secretive proprietary trading operation at the investment bank Morgan Stanley. These guys are so secretive at Morgan Stanley that I started calling around to some of my contacts at Morgan, and they'd never even heard of these guys. So it turned out that they were the largest prop desk at Morgan Stanley. They were running something around $5 to $6 billion for the bank using quantitative mathematical formulas and computers, and they had just gone through a really volatile period. They'd lost about $600 million in the course of a few days. They were run by a guy named Peter Muller, who was just sort of fascinating on the face of it from who he is. He's sort of he's a guy who had moved from New York to California actually, and kind of turned into something of a hippie and a surfer. But he was also really good at math and somehow found himself in this quant world, and came back to New York, was working at Morgan Stanley. At one point, he got really into music. He started playing his electric piano in the subways of New York City, busking for change, even though he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So you had this combination of this very secret group and this sort of charismatic person running it that, to me, just screamed out for a story. And I wrote a story. It was a page one story in the journal. And from there, I started, sort of picking away the layers of this quant world and learned about a lot of other people and, learned what they were doing. And I started realizing that these guys have taken over Wall Street in so many ways, and that's sort of how the book got started.
The quantitative models we know from climate change, for example, are a lot of the times wrong. Basically, whatever you put in, that's what you get out. So it very much depends on what you're factoring in, garbage in, garbage out.
Right, gigos.
Yeah, so these simulations, they're supposed to be used as tools to look for what-if scenarios, but it's been turned into the truth in Wall Street, correct? Mm-hmm. Explain that.
Right. Yeah, it's a debate that goes on amongst the quants all the time. Is it, was it the models or was it the bad data that went into the models? And it's obviously a combination of both. But I think built into a lot of these models are assumptions about the way that the market behaves, and in the book I call that the truth. It's this belief that there is, by using historical patterns and feeding those patterns into models that are they have certain inputs like volatility, for instance. how volatile the market actually is. That's something that is often just a number that these models are assuming. And when you look at the history of these models, that the volatility numbers are dramatically underestimate how bizarre, how wild, how chaotic the market can be. And I think a lot of times that's actually self-serving, because if the models actually had inputs saying the market could be extremely volatile, you just can't bet as much money. And that's what it comes down to, is the ability. The models are tweaked in order to maximize potential profits, but that is laying the groundwork for a huge blow-up.
Wouldn't you say the quantitative models are revealing the fact that the human factor, as the essence, as the core of it, has been taken out of the equation?
Mm-hmm.
And that represents the X factor, therefore.
Right.
Correct?
Yes, that's one of the big problems is, they're using quantitative formulas that are assuming that human beings are going to act rationally. It's a huge theory that it dominates the way that these guys work. It comes out of the universities. It's called rational expectations. It's also a key component of the efficient market hypothesis. The idea that the market is going to behave itself and act in a way that is predictable. And if you don't believe that, you can't use math and models to make giant bets on the market. And the reality is, and I know that, to me, I was really shocked when I learned that this is what these people think. But because when a normal person thinks about the stock market, you think greed and fear and panics and bubbles and all sorts of stuff that aren't rational at all. And that's I think what happened, especially in August of 2007, when a lot of these quant hedge funds started melting down. Their models were actually operating in reverse. The exact opposite of what they were predicting was happening. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience for a lot of these people.
I think it's fascinating that the human factor in all of this has been taken out of the central equation of quantitative models. For example, when Steve Jobs got ill a couple of years ago, Apple stock dropped like 100 points. Mm-hmm. When that word got out, that's how reflexive, quote, the market and humans are. They thought that the main leader was going to be gone and the company would not be worth as much, so people fled the stock. And I think if you look at that as a microcosm, after reading your book, when you see the high-frequency trades that are going on, and you say they're between 3 and 4 milliseconds a transaction, is that true?
It's actually faster than that. I've learned more about high-frequency trading since I wrote the book, and have written fairly extensively about it for the Wall Street Journal. And these guys are actually measuring trades now in by something called a picosecond, which is a 1/1,000,000th of a second.
So it's no longer a millionth of a second; it's a trillionth of a second.
Right.
How can that not alter markets, Scott? How can that not alter and impact industries?
It does. It's a big debate going on right now. Why do these funds need to be doing this? Why do they need to be sending so many orders to the markets? And the exchanges like NASDAQ and others like this because they get to charge a small fee for every order that they take. So they're actually encouraging this behavior, and some people think that there's a lot of risk being built up. The high frequency firms doing this claim that there is no risk, and that they're on top of everything, and they would be the first ones to lose out if anything went wrong. So they're very careful. But I think we've all heard that argument before.